Well, hello, everyone. It's your girl, Gabrielle. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. Let me tell you, sorry, let me tell you what this show is about. So, this is a show where we like to have real talk about real things. We like to talk about things in education, employment, mental health, physical health. We've done episodes about homeschooling, artificial intelligence, resiliency, self care. There's so much ground that we cover, but the overall intention of the shows and this podcast is for you to learn something. I want you to be better than you were yesterday, right? So, with that said, I am looking forward to this show because I have a brand new guest who is coming to the hot seat, but it is a repeat topic. So I love it when I bring back topics. So let me tell you what the topic is today. The topic that I am bringing back is study abroad. So this is study abroad part 4. You guys, this is the fourth time that I am doing this topic. So I hope you guys tune in to the previous episodes on this topic. So make sure you go back into the archives and listen or watch the previous episodes. But this is part 4 of Study Abroad. And let me tell you who my guest is who is going to sit on the hot seat. Her name is Kristina Wachter. She's actually Dr. Kristina Wachter. And let me just tell you who she is. So, she has a business called Cross Culture Connections, and Cross Culture Connections provides travelers with the critical tools for epic adventures through cultural immersion. She says that your journey will be exciting, fun, and transformative using their 4-step signature toolkit that takes your trip to the next level. You guys can create the experience of a lifetime by making connections that count and discovering the human side of travel. So all that sounds fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Dr. Wachter to the stage.
Hi.
Hi. So I'll call you Christy now. Hi,
Thank you,
Christy. How you doing
Christina.
today? How are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. I'm in the English countryside, experiencing life in a very idyllic location at a language immersion school right now. It's wonderful.
Yes, you are from across the pond. So you are in Britain right now or England?
It's near Southampton in England, and it's actually, for if anyone's familiar with the series Downton Abbey, it's about 30 minutes from where that show was filmed.
Awesome, awesome. All right. So the beauty of technology, we get to film from anywhere in the world. All right. So we're going to talk about study abroad. Particularly, we're going to be talking about study abroad tips, right?
Yes.
So you're going to share those tips with us. So I'm going to pass the baton over to you. Take it away.
Okay, thanks. So, what I argue is that if you are going to travel, you need to make it worth your while. So many of us want to travel, but we travel and we get tired from traveling, we get worn out. The trip itself, if we're investing time and money into this process, it needs to be transformative. It needs to make a change from the inside out and have a lasting impact on how you view life, how you interact with people after you return home. And you want to get the most out of your experience. And by doing so, I argue that you form cultural bridges with the people. You learn to live life as a local would, or at least see how the locals live their lives. You build cultural bridges by discovering the human side of travel, and you incorporate this into every single thing that you do. And it becomes so much more meaningful, a very rich, deep process that can influence not just yourself, but your loved ones, the people that you touch. You form connections that that can completely transform your life. I mean, for example, earlier in this trip, I was in London for a few days, and I popped into a local artist shop along the South Bank. And this was, I do love the big things. I will always go past Big Ben. I will go look at the major parts of a tourist experience, but then you go beyond that. So anyway, I went, I looked at some of the major landmarks, and then I went across the South Bank on my way to the Borough Market, and I stopped into a series of artist shops. And a woman that I met there was an incredible woman. She was originally from Iran, and uh, she was a very well educated woman, and she had been working as a graphic designer for 25 years. And she left her home for circumstances that I won't get into. But since she has relocated here in Britain, she has developed a business that is actually an artisan process, and she makes the most beautiful jewelry. And her jewelry, in the time that she has, her business has grown incredibly. It's been used in various functions in Buckingham Palace. She has a permanent collection in the British Museum. And anyway, her jewelry is beautiful, and she has done so much with her work, and she's doing what she loves to do after a career of work that she said was fine but not meaningful. And the other part of her work is that she always gives back. She is working with women in Afghanistan who are not able to get education in ways that they should have the right as human beings to get. She's working with women in terms of generational stories in Iran, connecting tribes culturally by patterns that have been by fabric patterns, embroidery patterns that have been passed down from generation to generation throughout centuries, and the stories that they tell. And so just talking to this one remarkable woman completely made my trip to London unique. And I have now connected with that person, and we're going to stay in touch. And I want to find out more about her work, and have that be part of who I am. So we're looking at immersive travel here, and that is what I promote. And it's a very easy thing to do, but you do have to do a little bit of planning for it. So that's what I have, Gabrielle, as an overview of my strategy. So um, would you like me to preview the 4 steps that you go through?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the 4 steps is easy. I call it the cultural spin, and spin is an acronym, SPIN. And the first step of this cultural toolkit that I give you is it's S, it's self. You look at where you are. You analyze yourself from a psychological perspective, from a perspective that posits your position wherever you are in comparison to where you're going, looking at other people's position and looking at yourself. Okay, so let's look at my personal bias. Let's look at my stereotypes. How is this serving me? How is this going to either enhance or maybe detract from my purpose? And then you look at yourself. Why am I going? Why am I studying abroad? What do I really want to accomplish? Okay, it would be cool to see these places, but it's got to be bigger. It's got to have meaning. What objectives, what goals can I set to make this a transformative experience? So I provide you with the details and lead you through this process of setting goals so that when you get to the place, you will be able to achieve them, and you will be able to change in ways that you didn't think possible and meet people you hadn't imagined before. So that's the first step. The second step is people, other people. And basically, this is where we bring in history and philosophy. We look at the history of a place, and you certainly don't need to, do a dissertation or anything on the history of a place, but we have so many resources available that I teach you how to look at the sources and put those in comparison with your personal bias and your perspective and what has happened in your life that shapes your impression of this history of the place you are going, or to find out more about this. And as you're looking at that, you develop an idea of the philosophical underpinnings. So basically, in a more formal sense, it's a type of historical and philosophical methodology that you put on the personal. And that is where you get to the next level, which is the I in spin. And that is where you embrace the culture. You look at cultural analysis and start to develop cultural competency and cultural intelligence through cultural immersion. And you do that in terms of respect, building cultural bridges, and connecting with other people based on the groundwork that you laid, and you understand elements of the culture. Okay, so say for example, the woman that I just referenced earlier, she talks about her cultural connections with women that she didn't know, but she was able to find out about these women and their history and their philosophies by looking at the visual arts. The visual arts also come into that, the embroidery that I mentioned. And that puts the story in context and helps you understand what is going on in the lives of people in this location now. How did the history shape it? How did history shape philosophy? A lot of times when, for example, when I take students to Lima and we're in Peru, we look at generations of resistance that was underground, that maintained a cultural presence in spite of conquistadors and others that came in and introduced a dominant culture. At the same time, there was an underground of resistance where cultural integrity rather has been maintained over centuries of change. So it gives you an idea of what people are like and where the culture stands, and also to look at the fun things. Okay, so why do we have this festival? Why is this festival this time of year? Let's go experience this. Where can I connect with this? Am I looking at this particular neighborhood in say Florence, for example? Why is this neighborhood against this neighborhood versus against this neighborhood in a healthy form of competition and festivals that have gone on forever? Why do certain types of food or certain types of beverage take precedence or take the forefront in particular situations? This is how you immerse yourself in the culture. And then finally, the fourth step is the N, and that means now. You get to place yourself in the now. And I do this virtually or in person. Let's take all of this stuff that we've gathered and put it to the test. And let's see how we can achieve the objectives that were set in step one, in the now, in the present, while you're dealing with your experience or setting up a framework to deal with it as you have your experience after you work with me. So that, in a very quick nutshell, is the process of the cultural spin method that my business, Cross Culture Connections, promotes.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you for breaking it down so simply. I appreciate that. So now, when it comes to studying abroad, right? Because I studied abroad
Yes.
during college. I went to Rome. You brought up an interesting point about putting yourself in the culture, and can you talk more about why that's so important? Because I feel like, because I know when I went there, I'm thinking like an American, and I'm trying to do all the American things, like, oh, where's like, you're sort of like, you're bringing your culture, because you're going to a place you don't really know. So of course you're going to stick to what you know. Oh, let me, like, oh, if I like to go to the movies a lot. So what I did was, oh, let me look for the movie theaters in Rome, so
Yeah.
it's,
And this is why it's hard, because what I want you to do is to develop cultural courage. And that is stepping outside of the known. Because I mean, if you think about it, well, you cannot go to a Starbucks in Rome. They are not allowed in Italy. But it's, so many other countries worldwide. If you're used to going to Starbucks, you can go to a Starbucks. But this is what I want you to develop, a cultural courage, so that you have experience in another way of living, and that enlarges your perspectives and your ability to deal with people. So if you're studying abroad, it's interesting. when I teach my students abroad, we are in the city. If we are in Paris, we go to as many arrondissements, which are the neighborhoods in Paris, as possible. So yeah, we see the Eiffel Tower, but then let's go to one of the outlying arrondissements. Let's look at some of the issues of gentrification, and we also engage in service. Service is a big part of my methodology. Let my students, for example, in Paris, we work with Serve the City Paris because that's one of the charities that allows English speaking tourists to serve while you're there and meet the homeless refugees and get their stories and their life. And very often, the service component is one of the biggest points of transformation for so many of my students. So if you get out of the comfortable place, if you could go to McDonald's, you could go to. I was very frustrated once in my very first time traveling to Paris, studying abroad, or not. This is before teaching abroad. I was just traveling abroad, but I was with some women. One of them was so determined to have French fries in France that she insisted we stop at McDonald's, and then we totally missed the Matisse Museum. And it was one of the points of frustration for me. If you're going to go somewhere, don't do what you can do at home, because you're paying a heck of a lot of money and you're investing time into a new place and a new experience. So it's risky, it's scary. And what I try to encourage is um, being able to be yourself in these other positions, because you have to have your own integrity and maintain your own integrity, and I certainly wouldn't want anyone to challenge your standards and values and beliefs and so forth. But let's look at those in comparison with other people, and other people outside of our comfort zone, and where we are. And by doing that, you get such appreciation for the human race, and how stereotypes, yeah, sometimes they can be useful, but how stereotypes can be extremely detrimental, or they simply don't fit. I mean, you cannot go, for example, as travel expert Corinna Cook in Italy says, you can't get pizza everywhere in Italy. You have to get beyond this. Go to the local markets, find out what the tastes are. It's not going to kill you. And I have, I've eaten plenty of things that I really don't want to go beyond tasting it, and because they're not very good, or I have a harder time eating things or whatever. But at least the willingness to try is character forming.
Yeah, to try new things, do as the Romans do, as they say, right?
Right.
To to try new things, to taste new foods. And, that's one of the things that stuck out to me when I was in Rome is the food. There's definitely a lot of carbs over there. And then just, I mean, and even if you, because there's also a lot of like globalization. So there is the McDonald's and um,
Mhm.
the American companies are in Italy. So, but
Yeah.
but even if like like soda, for example, like you'll see the Coca-Colas and the Fantas but it tastes different. Like it's actually sweeter over there, right?
Yes, and
But
yeah,
that's why it's
absolutely. Yeah.
cold.
That's a point of comparison that is so fun, because yeah, I like to I have a picture of myself in almost every place I've been with whatever version of Diet Coke they have, whether it's Coke Zero or Coca Light or whatever. I think it's fun to do this comparative analysis, and I get to a point if I'm in a foreign country. I mean, when I was in Paris last year, and then I had uh, Coca Light, and then coming home to Diet Coke, and I had my taste buds had adjusted to the preference of Coca Light. So you don't leave yourself behind, but you open yourself to other possibilities, other things that might happen that are just fun. And it may not be a lasting transformation, but at least you have a good story to go with it. Yeah, I had this when I was in Paris. I actually tried, in Rome, I tried, I don't know, some type of calamari that you would not have at home. I don't know. I can't think of something, but it's good to get beyond the chains, beyond the tourists, get out of the tourist traps, because if you travel like a local, it's cheaper. You find out where the local people are eating, and then you're not dealing with objective prices. You go to markets. I mean, the Borough Market, for example, in London, where I just was, um, I I just went from stand to stand, and I was able to eat, what I needed to for a meal, and vegetables were somewhere, just whatever. It was a balanced meal, and it was so much less than a meal you would get in London. And it had the local color, and some of the people had been, I don't know, doing that for generations within their family. So, and some of the things I didn't like, but I tried it. It did the trick. It filled me up. know?
And how,
And just look at this. Their art. Look at the art. Look at what the art has to say about a place or a person. You may not like the art, or you may not like how it looks, or it may not reflect your values, but still, it's educational. It teaches you so much about the place that you're going.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. So now how, I don't know if it's my thinking, but when it turns to schools, schools tend to be in metropolitan areas, in the popular areas, especially the schools abroad. So in terms of going outside of the city and going into the rural areas and the suburban areas, it's like, how does one do that? Like, I
Okay,
mean,
this
for
is
me to do
yeah.
that, I had to stay with a family that was outside of the city. But for someone who let's say
Mhm.
who's living on campus, and the campus happens to be in the city, and everything you want is in the city, how do you encourage someone who has never been to that country before to go outside the city and, try a
Well,
suburban area?
hey, most of the study abroad liaison companies have great resources in terms of figuring this out. But I can also, I help my students way outside of the realms of the liaisons that we work with, because again, I look at, okay, what are your objectives? What do you want to see? Okay, let's figure this out. It's easy because you have public transport. Public transport is amazing. I mean, and if okay, Europe, where I happen to be right now, you can get such cheap flights on EasyJet, Vueling, some of these other um, cheap airlines. You can get to another major city in an easy way. You can get on a train and be in the, right now I am an hour and 40 minutes away from London, roughly, by train. And it's a whole different world. I'm looking out at sheep right now outside of my window. And it's so easy to get from one context to another if you do the work. So you need to look. This is where the self-evaluation comes into play when you're setting your objectives. Okay, yeah, I do want to see what it's like in this city, but at the same time, I want to know, um, I want to know what it's like in a certain place. I want to know what cultural experiences they are. In our information age, it's easy to get at those, but it requires planning. And if you don't plan appropriately, then you can get in a lot of trouble. And if you're not smart about how you travel, then it could be dangerous. I mean, I'm even thinking of my nephew who fell asleep on a train in Spain last year and wound up several cities from his destination. He just was not, and he's actually traveled many places in the world before. It was just a stupid move on his part. So, and it wound up being an expensive cost too, because he wound up going so much further than he had budgeted and then had to get back. So, with the proper planning and a little bit of foresight, it's not that hard to broaden your experience. And if you find out certain visa requirements and so forth that are that may be in line with a different place that you want to go, if you can find out ahead of time, it's so easy to get to those sources. Then you can do the very things that you talked about. Because I certainly think if you're studying abroad, get the most of what you can in the place where you are located. But you have to expand beyond the borders of the prescribed itinerary, as far as I'm concerned, in order to achieve your full objectives.
So now, is it safe to say that the responsibility of planning falls on the schools, on the liaisons, because
A certain bit does, and there are certain ones. I mean, for example, with my university, the ones that we work with require you, for example, to have a cell phone, and they need to know where you are at all places at all times, so that if there's something that happens, they can get in touch with you immediately, so that you can deal with whatever the issue may be. If there's an issue at home that you have to deal with, or something like that, or if there's a medical emergency, and so that is up to the liaisons, but what I think goes beyond the important part here, the liaisons have some great things, great programs, but they're also cookie cutter. This is what we do for this group, this group, this group, this group, this group. It's effective. We get at the key points and we do what we have to do, but it's not personal. So that's where I say make it personal and set your criteria first, and then you posit that against, okay, this is what I'm getting from my study abroad group, but this is what it's missing. This is what I want to do. How can I achieve that? And then you figure out how to do it in terms of cost, and look at your budget, look at your time frame, and make it happen. As far as I'm concerned, you make it happen. You can make it happen, but it does come down to individual responsibility there to make it personal.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think now that we're in the age, I mean, now we're in the age of social media and Google, it's easier than when I went to Jerome,
Oh, it's so
to
easy.
research all these things, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, I do
yeah,
have one word of caution with that though,
yeah,
because you know how there's always I like a veneer on social media. There's a false representation of really how people live their lives there. So yeah, you get a start, you get ideas. Okay, this looks really cool, but then you do have to look at it yourself and not just say, "Oh, so and so went there. I'm going there." Look at whether or not it is fit for you.
that's a fair point. What you see on social media may not exactly be what will be for you,
Mhm.
but just the the point that I was making was that, now you're saying to go beyond the schools to really get the
Yeah,
full experience, to really immerse yourself in the culture. And now you can kind of just look whatever up on the internet. It's easier than ever to do
yeah,
that. And well, I do think that, like, schools, and they need to find ways for students to get into the culture initially.
yeah,
Like what my school did, there were festivals that were going on, so they structured festivals into classes. So there was like a wine festival that I went to. So when there's festivals going on, you structure your classes around it. And there was class trips as well. So if you
mhm,
put that into the curriculum, I think that
yeah.
gives the students that exposure to
Exactly.
that
And
initial.
they do their best, and they do a very good job to provide a well-rounded exposure. But I'm thinking, as even coming from a professor's position and taking students abroad, we have um, a list of options that we have to choose given the time constraints. So even the things that the liaison has to offer, you don't have time for that. So again, there may be something that I think, okay, the majority of the students would like to do this. They may like to go to this particular festival, but then that may be at the cost of doing something else. So you may want to contact your study abroad group and say, okay, what are some of the options? This is what we're doing. Yeah, but I'd also like to do this. So there are just so many different ways of going about gathering the information.
Yeah, of course, of course. And the information is out there.
Yes.
It's out there. You just gotta find it. All right. So now, what are things that students do wrong while studying abroad that get them into trouble?
I hope that one of the main things that that we talked about is just staying in your comfort zone. That is the biggest thing that you could do wrong. And there are, there are just be smart. You can you can travel safely, but be smart about it. Don't remember your representation. You're representing your school. You're representing your country. Don't. I've had issues with students who have been completely drunk and completely um, misrepresented who we as a school stood, what we stand for, what we as the Americans from this perspective stand for. And you're always you're a tourist. Clearly you're always on display. I would say stay away from getting being drunk in public. I've seen so many mistakes, including you make yourself a target for pickpocketing very easily with that, and you miss out on a lot. You miss out on a lot of the memories. You forget them. So that's one of the biggest things that I would want to say. Also, just make sure that you think about the issue of respect and the golden rule. How do you want to be treated? Treat others the same way. I mean, just some very basic things. Remember that this is not your turf. You are a guest. Be respectful of the hosts, and at the same time, respect yourself. Respect yourself, and remember this is a big thing that I'm doing. This is a risky situation that I'm putting myself in terms of putting yourself out there into a new place. And so give yourself some slack that way. That's another thing. I think travelers should always be ready to give themselves some slack if they're doing the best they can.
Now, you mentioned before about traveling safety. Could you elaborate more on that?
Yeah. I have, in fact, I have a safety guide. If your viewers want to email me, I could send this to them. But some things that I think you need to know basically, one of the biggest things I mentioned public transport before. With public transportation, make sure that you know the hours, you plan your route before you go. You figure out how much to get on, say, in London on your Oyster card, and make sure it's going to get you there, and then have extra on it just in case you take a wrong route and it uses more than you need. Um, Also, I would like you to make sure that you have uh, copies of your passport in your phone. Take a picture of it, leave it with someone at home. Have the basics for first aid, blisters, and so forth. Make sure that you do not keep all of your money in the same place, uh, and you are smart about using an ATM. Do not use one that is not attached to a bank or a major grocery store, um, a supermarket like Sainsbury here, for example. Um, and also, be aware of your surroundings. Always look at where you are. One of the easiest things is to just, keep a mental look for a marker as you're going along. Okay, this blue door is on the corner with a red sign above it, so that you don't get lost, so that you know where you're going. Keep your phone. I suggest keeping your phone in your pocket and having your earbuds in and just listening to your GPS that way. So, and you learn more that way. But also, you're aware, you're focused, and those are really the basic things. You take your precautions, and you make sure that you are up to date. In terms of all of your, if you're going to a place that requires shots, that you're up to date on that in plenty of time, that you heal for that, that you have your basic first aid and medications associated with that, and that your folks at home know where you are.
There, there it is. There's a lot that that students have to do to be safe in another country, and especially where it's obvious that they're not from that country, right? Uh,
Yes,
from
because it usually is, and that can be a problem or not at all.
right, so it could be from the clothes that they're wearing,
Mhm.
because the clothes are typical for America, for example, but may not be typical for Italy, right? So even just the clothes that you're wearing, your accents, that you're wearing the the school lanyard, right?
Yeah.
So, or you have the band on your wrist, like it's obvious. The way
Yeah.
that you're walking, like it's obvious that you're a tourist, right? And so
Yeah.
that makes you an easy target.
Yeah, and one other thing associated with that, be smart about the bags that you use. If you're using a backpack, be careful with it. If you are using um, a, a, a bag, like a crossbody bag, make sure there are two closures to it to get at your stuff, especially when you're in crowded places, because pickpocketing, particularly in Europe, is the biggest crime that you'll have to deal with if you have to deal with any crime at all. So
Mm,
you do be careful about that. And remember this, I mean, even my daughter, who also traveled the world, when she went to Amsterdam, she foolishly she had jet lag. She put her bag down in a restaurant and she thought she could see everyone, but someone stole her wallet. And it was more than likely the store owner, the little cafe owner, because there were not that many people there. So just always be aware of your stuff.
there you go. There you go. So now, so what is it about? What is it about studying in a what's so well? Let me think of my question. So, what's so attractive about studying in another country? Why not?
What is so attractive about it is that it is an adventure. It is just, it's so stimulating. I mean, I talked about the mental and personal growth associated with it, but you are charged. You are on an adrenaline rush and learning about new things, and it's a visual feast. You see all of this stuff that's going on. It's a multisensory experience. You taste new foods. You see a bunch of new things. You smell things, some great, some not so great, but you are continually being gifted all of this new sensory stimuli. And it is so invigorating, and it is so, um, it contributes to, I don't know, such a different outlook on life. You have better perspectives. You have fun in ways that you don't at home. And you have trials, you have things that are hard that you survive, and then being able to survive and get through something, even if it's loneliness, it's big. And the fact that you can say, bam, I did that, makes all the difference in the world.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so we're gonna start to wind the things down. So, I like to ask my guests to give words of wisdom to our audience. So, do you have any words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
Yes, I have some words of wisdom. Take the chance. Develop cultural courage. I will help you if you want me to, but take the risk in stepping out of your comfort zone, even if it's not studying abroad. If it's just going to another different place, taking steps throughout each season of your life to experience life beyond what is handed to you makes all the difference in the world.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, I know you gotta, I know you gotta run. I know I kept you long, but
No, I love this, Gabrielle. You're great. This has been so much fun.
thank you for coming on Hot Topics. I do appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom and experience and all those great tips. So thank you for coming on Hot Topics.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. It's been absolutely delightful.
Thank you. All right, so I know you gotta run, so I will let you go.
Okay.
There was some videos that you sent, so I'll just play those and then we'll do the promo. So I know you gotta run. I'll let you go. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. All right, you guys. So before we run, I know Christy had to go, so she sent over a few videos. So I'm gonna take a moment and play those now. So here is the first video. second video. All right, here's the third video. And the final video. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so thank you to Christy for the videos. All right, I'm going to do her promotion right now. All right, you guys. So you can find Dr. Wachter on all over the web, you guys. So you could check her out on her website. The website is www.crosscultureconnections.com. You could also follow her on LinkedIn. She has 2 LinkedIn accounts. One of them is for her business, which is Cross Culture Connections. The other one is her personal LinkedIn, which is Kristina Wachter, PhD. So I encourage you to follow her on both of those LinkedIn accounts. She also has a business Facebook page. It is Cross Cultural Cost. I'm sorry, Cross Culture Connect. On Instagram, it is cross.cultureconnections. She's also on Threads, so she's been sucked into the thread phase. Not phase, craze, I should say. She's been sucked into the thread craze. So she has a thread account as well. So you could follow her on 499-69505. She's also on Twitter, Cross Culture Con, and TikTok, Cross Culture Connections. So I encourage you guys to follow her on all of her social media accounts to stay in touch with her. If you want to learn more about her business, if you're looking for study abroad tips, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to her. I encourage you to reach out to her. Go to her website. It has all that information. The website again is www.crosscultureconnections.com. All of this information, of course, will be in the description. So if you missed all of this, don't worry. The information will be available to you in the description. It is also for my video people. It is scrolling below at the bottom of the screen. But whether you're watching this on video or you're listening to this on a podcast, don't fret. The information is available. So whatever the information I'm saying here will be available in the description. So, but make sure you take advantage of her services. I'm going to give the website once again. It is www.crosscultureconnections.com. All right, you guys, and that is it. We have reached the conclusion of yet another episode. Thank you so much for joining me. So I'm going to take this moment to remind you that Hot Topics is a production of my company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So if you are looking for tutoring for yourself or for your child, maybe your child is struggling in school, maybe they're falling behind on homework, maybe you keep getting those calls from the teacher saying, their promotion in doubt. We've pretty much heard it all, right? So whatever your situation is, or maybe you want extra prep time for an exam, or you want to get them ready for that big test coming up, whether it's the SAT or the SAT or ACT or anything like that, reach out to us. Our website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. You can call us, you can email us, you can even find us on social media as well. We are on multiple platforms. Just type in the name A Step Ahead Tutoring Services and we will pop up. Look for the yellow pencil with the gray and black tip, and that is us. So again, I will give you the website, www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. And I also encourage you to follow us on social media to stay in touch with us. I also encourage you guys, let me know your thoughts about this episode. Leave a comment in the comment section or in the comment thread. If you can leave a comment now on Spotify. So if you're listening to this on a podcast, please drop a comment. Uh, Good pods as well. You can also drop a comment. So drop a comment, drop a note. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave us a comment. Let us know your feedback about today's episode. It definitely helps us out. If you didn't like it, if you did like it, whatever it is, please leave a comment. It helps us out. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me again on Hot Topics. I look forward to you joining me at the next episode. And now I am signing off. Arrivederci.